Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to call to order the March 16th meeting of the Local Agency Formation Commission at 2:38 p.m. We continue to meet via teleconference. The board chambers used for commission meetings continues to be closed to the public. At this point, the clerk will explain how both written and spoken public comments can be made by attendees of the meeting. Angela?
Thank you, Chairman O'Neill. For those attending the meeting on the Zoom video conference, we will use the raised hand feature in order to organize any public comments. During the general public comment period and for each item on the regular agenda, I will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raise hand feature to speak on that item. For those joining by phone, you may press *9 to indicate your desire to speak, and then you may press *6 when you are called upon. Once you are prompted to speak, you will unmute your microphone and we will inform you that you will have 2 minutes. Please note that members of the public must wait in prompt in connection with each agenda item before using the raise hand function. For example, you cannot raise your hand during item number 3 if you would like to speak on item number 5. Written comments that were submitted in advance will be read by staff during discussion of the appropriate agenda item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Now proceed to item 1, a roll call vote. Angela?
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Here.
Commissioner Horsley,
Pending.
joining us shortly.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lohman,
Here.
Commissioner Warback,
Here.
Commissioner Slocum. I also did hear from his aide, and she's will be getting back to me on Commissioner Slocum's attendance. Vice Chair Draper,
Here.
Chairman O'Neill.
Here.
Thank you. And I would like to note that we have alternate members present in the audience: Katie Martin, Jim O'Neill, and Diana Reddy. And from staff, we have Mr. Rob Bartoli, legal counsel Timothy Fox, and Janice Lujan. And I do see that Commissioner Horsley has joined us.
Oh, okay.
Here.
Hello, Don. Welcome.
I was in Half Moon Bay and didn't get back until now.
No problem. No problem. We just weren't sure where you were on 92. You know what I mean? So we started. Okay, going to item 2. Thank you. We'll move to item 2, an open public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there anybody wishing to speak for items not on the agenda?
Thank you, Chairman. We did not receive any written comments for items not on the agenda, and I do not see any virtual hands raised for this item.
Okay, thank you. Next, item 3. We'll now move to item 3, the consent agenda. It's approval of the minutes, resolution to make findings relating to remote meetings under the Brown Act, and LAFCo file of annexation in Portola Valley. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a first by Horsley, second by Warback? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Cosgrove, sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes.
Commissioner Lohman,
Yes.
Commissioner Warback,
Yes.
Vice Chair Draper,
Yes.
Chair O'Neill.
Yes, and that
Thank you.
motion passes unanimously, 6-0. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to item 4, adjournment to closed session. This Zoom link will remain open while the commission discusses item 4 in closed session. We return back to this meeting room at the conclusion of our closed session. Is there any members of the public that wish to speak on the closed session item?
Chairman, we did not receive any written comments for this item, and I do not see any virtual hands raised.
Okay, I will see all the commissioners on the other side. So, okay.
Darn.
Mike, you came back to the regular session. You're on mute, but. Okay.
Hi, Angela. This is the one that I was labeled as the closed session. Am I in the wrong one?
Yeah, let me send you an email directly with the link. Sorry about that. Hold on
Okay.
1 second.
Okay, we're waiting for everybody else to see. Angela, I was first back because I was used to pressing the button, huh? Let's see, we're still missing a couple. Okay. I think everybody's back from the closed session. So we'll move on to item 5. Now we have a report from Tim on the closed session.
So in closed session, the commission took action by unanimous vote to appoint Rob Bartoli as the executive officer of the San Mateo County LAFCo.
All right, next item is item number 6. We're going to move on to the appointment of Rob Bartoli as executive officer of San Mateo LAFCo. I need a motion.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
And I assume there's no public comments.
Thank you, Chairman. We did not receive any written public comments for this item,
Okay.
and I do not see any virtual hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Angela, if you can do a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes,
Commissioner Loman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rohrbach,
Yes.
Vice Chair Draper,
Yes.
Chairman O'Neill.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Chair. Your motion passes. Congratulations, Rob.
Yeah, congratulations, Rob.
Congratulations. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank the commission for its support for me in the new role as the executive officer and in the support I've received as the management analyst and the interim executive officer. And I really look forward to working with all of you to complete the work of the commission. We have a busy year, as you all know, but it will be a very productive year, I think, for LAFCo. So thank you again.
Item number 7, consideration of municipal service review circulation draft for county services area 11 Pescadero. Rob?
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is the MSR and municipal service review for County Service Area 11 or CSA 11 that serves the Pescadero. Just a brief reminder of service reviews for the public and for anyone in attendance. Municipal service reviews or MSRs are intended to serve as the tool to help LAFCo, the public and other agencies understand services and governance deliveries from both special districts and cities. They're also intended to support spheres of influences when there are amendments or to keep them in check. There also are areas of determination for service reviews, and those talk about growth, disadvantaged unincorporated communities, the capacity of agencies to serve their areas, the financial ability of those agencies, opportunities for shared services, accountability, and any other specific matter that a LAFCo policy can look at. And LAFCo looks, San Mateo LAFCo has 2 policies, one around water resiliency and climate change, and also regarding natural hazard preparedness. So County Service Area 11, it was formed in 1988 originally to provide water service to portions of Pescadero, mainly within the urban area of Pescadero, urbanized area of Pescadero, around Stage Road and Pescadero Creek Road. There's currently 101 customer connections, and it's a unique water system in the county in that it relies solely on groundwater. It's one of the very few agencies that does that. There's a couple of other ones, but most of the water providers in the county get some water from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. The system itself is consistent of 3 wells. Well number 1 and 2 were originally drilled in 1992. And then in 2018, well number 3 was constructed as the primary supply well now. CSA 11 is governed by the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. and the County Department of Public Works manages the water system and finances for CSA 11. They also manage a contract for the actual operations and maintenance of the system. This is just a general overview of the map of the CSA 11 area. A majority of the area around Stage Road and Pescadero Creek is served, and North Street is served by CSA 11. These are homes along Pescadero Creek Road and near Water Lane. And the small piece out here is the location of the existing Cal Fire Station. So in the review, a couple of key issues that were identified was that the water levels for CSA 11 are in decline and really have been in decline since the creation of the system in 1992. The system can accommodate growth even with this decline, though, depending on how much growth is added year over year. Current water rates do not support the year-to-year operations of the water system. And there continue to be local efforts that look at the future development in Pescadero, whether that's efforts by Puente and other community groups and local residents, or efforts looking broader by some of the agencies, including the Pescadero, La Honda Pescadero Unified School District, which was looking at certain points at teacher housing in the CSA 11 area. Constraints such as flooding and septic system requirements, water flow, and other economic conditions will continue to dictate how development occurs within the CSA 11 area. And there has been a number of efforts made to address the flooding in the community, both by the county and by other agencies, including the San Mateo Resource Conservation District. Due to the small population base of the CSA 11, the cost for providing those municipal water services and other municipal services, including solid waste, are relatively high in cost compared to other communities. And the County of San Mateo and Cal Fire have been working regarding the relocation of Station 59, the current station in Pescadero, within the Pescadero community, and any future expansion of the CSA 11 boundaries to serve a new fire station would be subject to a LAFCo review and approval at a separate time. So just briefly talking about some of the determinations and recommendations that are in the draft circulation document. Regarding growth, as I had mentioned, growth is limited by these constraints for development with this in the CSA 11 area. There is a recommendation within the MSR that the county consider a preparation of an area or a community plan for Pescadero. There's a number of efforts that are ongoing within the community, like I said, I had mentioned, either through community groups that are working on development plans or efforts of local residents. A number of efforts around flooding and sea level rise to kind of bring these constraints and opportunities together under the guidance of the county planning department, excuse me. It would be helpful to kind of look at what the future development could be for the CSA 11 area and Pescadero as a whole, or the South Coast as a whole. And that would allow the county to engage with stakeholders and understand the community's thoughts on development, but also include the regulatory framework that development occurs within. The capacity and adequacy of public services regarding the aquifer for CSA 11 is considered to be an overdraft, which means that it's not recharging. There's more water being utilized than is being put back for CSA 11. And it's estimated that the CSA 11 wells can still be able to provide into the future, but it is dependent upon how recharge occurs in the future and how much development occurs and how much use for that water from CSA 11. Some of the recommendations in the MSR is that CSA 11 should continue to monitor what the water levels are and develop long-term plans for the continued operation of either CSA 11 or domestic water services to the community. And again, if this community plan was created by the county, the plan should explore how CSA 11 could potentially meet fire flow and evaluate by those financial costs, because those have been a constraint regarding commercial development in the Pescadero area. Regarding the financial ability of the district is that currently the CSA 11 water rates do not support operations and continue to negatively impact the district's balance. It's recommended that the county prioritize a review of the CSA 11 rates to see if there can be changes to them that would have the district balance out. And CSA 11 should also identify long-term capital projects that will be needed and ways that could be funded. In the past, when capital projects have been needed, it has been through a mix of loans, grants, one-time funds from the state or the county for those projects. Just a brief overview of the CSA 11 budget from 2014 to 2020 to 2020, excuse me. As you can see in a number of years, starting really in 2016, 17, there is net losses. And there's a number of factors to that. A lot of it has to do with the operating revenue and then not meeting what those expenditures are. You see the large jump in 17, 18, and 18, 19. Those are when one-time funds come in for projects. That was the drilling of well number 3. But then in 19, 20, the operating revenue goes back to what kind of the baseline was in previous years. But the operating expenditures still remain rather high because, again, pumping costs are expensive out there for CSA 11, and it's a small rate base. Generally, some other issues that were identified in the MSR is that the county should evaluate costs for solid waste at the Pescadero transfer station. So while not part of the CSA 11, we did look at some other areas and issues that are out there. The transfer station provides solid waste for the residents of both CSA 11 and the surrounding Pescadero community. Currently, the rates for the transfer station do not cover the costs of the operation at there. The fees that are not, the tipping fees are not covering what the contract is with Recology that the county has. Students and staff at the Pescadero High School, at the middle and high school, have been supplied bottled water since 2015, as the domestic well on site currently does not meet regulatory standards. And so that is an issue that the county is aware of as part of the fire station project. If there is a future annexation, it would also potentially include the fire station would be located at the Pescadero middle and high school sites, where a potential annexation could occur for both the high school site, the school site, and the new fire station. The county and the San Mateo Resource Conservation District have been working to address a number of flood impacts in the Pescadero area. And the county has also begun mapping sea level rise risks to the south coast of the county, including Pescadero. 3 other areas where we didn't necessarily have any recommendations were regarding shared services, disadvantaged unincorporated communities, and accountability structures and efficiencies. Just a brief overview of those 3 areas. For shared services, in the previous MSR, the county actually did explore shared services or contracting for CSA 11, but there were no water purveyors that were interested in taking on additional roles or additional tasks at the time. And the county has said that there is no desire from any agencies that they are aware of to have any kind of shared services with CSA 11. For disadvantaged communities, CSA 11 does provide water services to an unincorporated area under the statute. However, under the definition of what a disadvantaged community is, CSA 11 does not qualify as a disadvantaged community. And that has to do with a little bit with how census tracts work, in that it's such a broad area and can be challenging to actually get good demographic information for the Pescadero area. The median household of Pescadero per the census is higher, is above the 80% threshold for being a disadvantaged unincorporated community. So under the statute, disadvantaged unincorporated communities does not apply in this circumstance. But we are aware, as everyone is probably, that there is a large agricultural community around Pescadero and the importance of that community to the county and the Pescadero area specifically. And that there are probably disadvantaged people in that area, but under the statute, it does not apply. And then regarding accountability, currently the CSA 11 is governed by the Board of Supervisors. The report mentions the creation of potentially a community services district, the transfer of the water system to a private company, or the formation of a mutual water company, describes those a little bit in detail in the report. But LAFCo does not have any recommendations for any governance change at this time for CSA 11. The
Pardon the interruption. I would like to note through the chair that Commissioner Slocum has joined us. I'm having a little bit of difficulty promoting him into a panelist, but he has been online for about 5 minutes now on the attendee side, but I can't get him to come over as a panelist. I don't know if he's having issues on his end, but I wanted to note that for the commission.
No, thank you, Angela. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you. So generally for public outreach and the comment period for the MSR, the comment period has opened up as of March 7th and will run through April 7th. I presented to the Pescadero Municipal Advisory Council on March 8th, and they were generally supportive of the MSR and a number of the recommendations that were listed by LAFCo. Tentatively, this item would come back to the commission for final adoption on May 18th. And then, as mentioned previously, any proposal for the expansion of the CS11 boundaries, which I know has been discussed with the county about annexation, would be subject to approval and would require a public hearing separately from the MSR. So if we had an annexation proposal, that would be a separate track for that. So the recommendations for this specific item are to open the public hearing, accept comments, provide any commissioner comments on the draft circulation document, and then to direct staff to schedule the final MSR for the May 18th commission meeting and then circulate it to impacted parties. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from commissioners?
Rob, does that CSA 11 residents rely on septic systems only? There's no wastewater treatment that's available to the residents. Is that right?
That is correct. There is no wastewater, there's no public wastewater systems within the CSA 11 area or any areas in the South Coast. There was a study that was conducted by the Department of Public Works that's referenced actually in the MSR about potentially creating some kind of public wastewater system. Going through that process, the county determined that it was not feasible due to financial issues. But that would be something, again, as part of a potential community plan that the county created, could look at if that's viable or not to create another system. And then if not, kind of what the constraints are by having to continue to rely on septic systems when those systems are in a floodway.
Good point. Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Horsley?
Did I hear you correctly, Rob, that one of the things that I was interested in is extending CSA 11 to the Pescadero High School site? You're saying that this would require a separate process, separate hearing?
That's correct. So if there was if there was a proposal to annex the Pescadero High School and a potential future site for the fire station, that would then be an application from the county of San Mateo to LAFCo.
Isn't that exactly what the county's doing?
That is the process they are working on, but there has not been a formal application to us yet.
Really?
Yeah, there is specific timing that we have worked with county staff on, because if there is an annexation proposal, that's then subject to environmental review, and the county would be the lead agency and LAFCo would be a responsible agency. So they are working through that environmental document review now, along with preparing the LCP amendments. So they are working through that process. And when the board of supervisors then adopts the application along with the prerequisite CEQA documents, then the LAFCo process will start for the annexation review.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from
I have comments.
Commissioner Draper?
I have 3 comments on the report. The first is the text uses 2 ways of referring to the rural-urban boundaries. And I suggested to Rob pick one and just keep it the same way throughout the whole report. Plus, there's no definition of what the boundary is. And in my talking with Rob, I suggested a footnote be placed at the bottom of the first time it's used. And he agreed that that would be a good way to put a definition in there. I inferred what the definition was, but it's better just to say what it is. That's my first comment. Oh, and I just, by the way, I have shared all these comments with staff prior to the meeting. The second comment is typically when an aquifer is overdrafted, land subsidence comes along with it. I'm not saying all the times, but oftentimes it's a problem throughout the entire state. And the subsidence is a problem for current development. It's also increases flooding. And one of the things that it could do here is allow for saltwater intrusion. And so the text of the document says that it used existing reports. So in talking with Rob, it's apparent that the water report that was used didn't look at land subsidence as a problem and the impacts of land subsidence. And so there are groundwater management efforts that can be done to address land subsidence or overdrafting. Recharging the aquifer is one, but there's others. And so he suggested which I think is a good idea, is that there already is a recommendation that there be I don't know if the term's master plan, I forget the word, but it basically a management plan done. And that in that recommendation, we also include the words that this management plan should include the analysis of any land subsidence and measures to manage the aquifer to reduce overdrafting. So that's my second recommendation. The third is it's unclear to me how the district gets a fund balance if it's been not meeting financial requirements for years. And so I've asked Rob to take a look at how in the heck you can get a fund balance that you can draw down on in the first place. And he said he'd go back to finance and see how that was established in the first place. So those are my three comments. I just think it needs to be clear of how you get money in the bank if you don't have it and keep drawing down on. So those are my three comments. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Is there any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Horsley.
I agree with some of what Dan is saying about the well. It is really, there isn't subsidence. It's actually it's up on it's on an elevated plateau, so we're really not concerned about subsidence in the same as the Central Valley. And you know, it just is. We have done those kinds of studies on it to take a look at, you know, at one time we were told there was one of the reports was done before my tenure, was done by the Todd Engineering, and they had indicated that the aquifer had about a 20-year lifespan. So in any case, we dug the second well, and that apparently has a 99-year lifespan. It is not supposed to be, it is basically for a public water supply. It is not for you know, watering your garden, for example. Most people do have wells. You know, generally they are impacted with nitrates pretty heavily with nitrates. So a lot of what you're asking for, we've already done. But you know, I can tell you that this is sort of an unusual thing. This is not an aquifer in the typical sense. As I understand it, it's what's called an ancient aquifer, essentially in rock. So the water is probably, according to what I've heard, is like it's thousands of years old. It is not going to get recharged. There's no place to, even if there isn't any source to recharge other than rainwater. So there isn't a essentially everybody's dependent on a septic system as opposed to a water treatment plant where you could conceivably have tertiary treated water that you could conceivably move or pump up to some kind of a pond or something, but that simply does not exist. Is that once this CSA 11 is dry, that's it. They'll have to come up with some other kind of a water system. And I do think that a report indicates that we believe that there's sufficient water till the end of the century. Beyond that, I don't know. Maybe it's a PUC.
So my point was that if this draws from existing documents, then what you just described is that there are other documents that may exist that may answer those questions, but they weren't used for this report. So there seems to be two options. Either we go out and get the info from the other reports, or my recommendation is when there's this management plan to address those topics. And if there's no problem, then there's no problem. But I just think it's a big hole that's missing here. That's all. In this report.
I think the documents are available through DPW and also for environmental health.
And if I may, through the chair, we did utilize, there was 3 versions of the top report. I think actually maybe even 4. There's, I believe, one from 2002. There's one from 2019, and then there's a separate one from 2021 that we all have referenced. And to both and Commissioner Draper and Commissioner Horsley are correct in what those reports say. It's that they say them sometimes at different times. So there was a very complete report done in 2002, which is different circumstances than what we were looking at almost 20 years later. The 2021 report was very much focused, the latest one was very much focused on potentially adding the high school site plus the new fire station, and looking at what that development was. But as part of that report, there was then essentially unknowns that were talking about, well, if it recharges at this certain rate, then we think we can have the lifespan of the aquifer out to 90 years. If no additional development other than the school site and the fire station are added to CSA 11. If there's additional demand through development, then the lifespan shortens dramatically. And it's also then talking about the limitations of what the recharge is. So there are some pieces that are kind of missing about what the long-term management potentially of the aquifer and of CSA 11 might look like outside of this particular development project. So that's kind of where the recommendation is more focused on.
And you know, where I'm really concerned with Pescadero was that the local folks would really like to build housing, that's a very foolish thing for them to be doing. They also want to have more commercial operations, and what they fail to see is that they have a very limited water supply. They even though there is a creek, you can't take water out of the creek. You know, essentially they don't have the rights to take it out of the creek. And we have done studies and taken a look if there are other aquifers. There simply aren't other aquifers in that area. So I think that there has to be, this Pescadero community has to be very, cautious when it comes to development on that south coast.
Curiosity, do they have RENA numbers they're supposed to do, or are they exempt because of these issues?
Well, they're not a city. The county has RENA numbers, but the city, Pescadero is not a city no, they do not have RENA numbers.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Oh, the county has the numbers, and the county has to find places someplace. And I guarantee you that, we're not looking at Pescadero. And I know that, I just know that we're very cautious about any kind of development on that south coast.
Right. That's prudent. Is there any other comments from commissioners? Is there any members of the public that wish to speak on this issue?
Thank you, Chairman. We did not receive any written public comments for this item, but I do have one hand raised from Puente de la Costa Sur. So give me 1 second so I can share my screen and unmute their microphone. You may begin speaking.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Rita Mancera. I'm the Executive Director of Puente. I hear about this meeting by chance. It's the first time I joined. And I am very scared about the conversation you're having about this community. And I'm not going to be very eloquent because this sounds really personal. I find unacceptable that you have a slide saying that the high school, middle school have been receiving, bottled water since 2015. And so something has to be done. We're not talking about developing housing just to develop the area. In fact, our community through the town planning process said how much they love the community the way that it is in that regards. But we're trying to find solutions for people that already live overcrowded, that already share houses, that are already paying a lot of money for rent, that are already living in conditions in barracks and dormitories at farms that are not well kept. So I know there's a deep connection with water, and I just really would like to encourage you and put a word that something has to be done. If we are trying to find solutions and the big challenge is going to be water, then there gotta be some other solutions for rural communities like Pescadero, more than saying that nothing can be done. So I would like to hear more about that. And if there's an application process for the county to annex CSA 11 to the fire station, that does mean, based on this report, that application will be denied?
Okay, thank you for your comments, Puente. Is there any other hands raised?
Thank you, Chairman. We have no more hands raised for this item.
Okay, I bring it back to the commission for any other comments, questions, and a motion. I'd like to make a motion, not a motion, excuse me, but a comment that I think to actually answer Puente, I think this resolution or this municipal service review will aid the city in trying to figure out what to do. Maybe it can allow more housing if, the population is limited or whatever the community might say at these hearings. So I think it would be prudent to move forward with this. But I need a motion.
I'd like the motion to direct the executive officer to reschedule the final municipal service review for CSA 11.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
A second motion by Horsley, second by Warback. Angela, if we can have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes.
Commissioner Loman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rohrback,
Yes.
Commissioner Slocum,
Yes.
Vice Chair Draper,
Yes.
Chairman O'Neill.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Your motion passes.
And I'd like to just make a comment that a yes vote is supportive of Pescadero trying to figure out how to move forward. So I'm moving on to item 8, consideration of adoption of proposed work program and draft LAFCo budget. Rob?
Thank you, Chair. So you have received a staff report actually that was revised on March 15th with an updated recommendation just for your reference, and that has been posted also on the website. The proposed draft of LAFCO budget for 22-23 fiscal years is approximately $768,143, which actually is a decrease of $128,000 from fiscal year 21-22. The 1/3 apportionment is approximately $173,000, and that's a reduction of $37,000 over the previous fiscal year. And why some of those changes are, and some of the budget summary to it, is it's largely is a part of a reduction to salary and benefits due to staffing changes. Martha, the previous executive officer for LAFCO, was at a higher step than the current position that's budgeted for the executive officer. The management analyst position is budgeted at step 3, according to guidance from the county budget office, though. As some other additional numbers that are in there, There's a proposed $2,300 for continued internet and communications support, including the purchasing of a cell phone for an associated phone plan for the executive officer. There's a proposed budget item for mapping and GIS work of $6,500, including $5,000 with scanning of historical LAFCo records and maps. And then we're working with conjunction with County Public Works and other county departments to do the potential scannings and have some kind of cost sharings between those departments. And those talks are ongoing. And then there's a potentially $75,000 for a special reserve for consulting costs for future MSRs, not part of 22-23 fiscal year, but moving forward in 23-24 for future MSRs then. And there's an estimated fund balance of $216,000 from 21-22 to be applied in this upcoming fiscal year. Also, the reduction in the overall budget from last year was the use of the one-time revenues that was received from the developers for the MSR for the city of East Palo Alto, the East Palo Alto Sanitary District, and West Bay Sanitary District. Those funds will all be expended in this fiscal year. In Cortese, Knox, Hertzberg, and Government Code sections 56381, there's a reference to stating that at minimum, the LAFCo budget shall propose a final and a proposed and final budget shall be equal to the budget adopted from the previous fiscal year, unless the commission finds that a reduced staffing or program cost will nevertheless allow the commission to fulfill the purpose and its programs. So while fiscal year 22-23 budget is less than the previous adopted budget, the budget reduction is in fact due to large changes in staffing and the associated decrease in salaries and benefits. And it is not anticipated that this reduction in budget would impact LAFCo operations or the proposed work plan. There's quite a bit in the work plan, but just a high level for some of the municipal service reviews that we anticipate either in this fiscal year or the coming fiscal year. The aforementioned City of East Palo Alto Sanitary District, and West Bay Sanitary District MSR, which is ongoing. We do anticipate releasing that draft documents for the circulation MSR in early April, with a public workshop potentially on April 6th, and then a special commission meeting on April 20th. The CSA 11 MSR, which was just presented today, as well as potentially the future CSA 11 annexation, the high school and the fire station site. The City of South Francisco and the Westboro Water District MSRs, with hearings potentially in spring and summer of this year. And then in early 2023, it's anticipated that we would conduct an MSR for both the City of Burlingame and Hillsborough. Later in 23, San Bruno and Millbrae, and then Foster City to conclude the year. And then potentially in concept, future MSRs that were consultant-led, where either we were doing multiple agencies grouped by type or by service provider, or by geographic region, depending on what the topic may be, which would be approved by the commission at a future budget. But we are putting aside potentially $75,000 in this year's upcoming budget to help with those costs. Some other items that we're continuing to work on are some other additional annexations in Belmont, and then coordinating with the county staff on those conversion of those digital records, as well as our ongoing audits that we do annually now. So that was just a brief overview of the budget for the draft proposed budget. So the recommendation then is to open the public hearing, consider and approve the motion of the proposed budget, and then direct the executive officer to schedule the final budget hearing for May 18th. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is there any comments from any commissioners or questions?
I hope we don't get any complaints about reducing the budget.
Oh, I'm sure they're going to be lined up for that, you know. Commissioner Horsley, I think you might have had something you wanted to bring up.
I think it had to do with the work plan.
Right, yeah,
Well, I did talk to Rob, just for the other commissioners, I indicated we had asked for refresher MSR on the Harbor District, and also Broadmoor Police District has been much in the news from essentially for some significant fraud that has occurred. And so I had asked Rob if there was, if this was timely to do an MSR on the Broadmoor Police District, seeing that several of their command staff have been accused of fraud, or I guess in one case actually pled guilty to at least some offense. So it's thought it would be kind of timely to look at Broadmoor Police District and to see where on the schedule we would look for a refresher on the Harbor District.
I would support Commissioner Horsley's remarks, especially on the Broadmoor district. I think there's other investigations at the state, CalPERS investigation, state level, and the local level at the county looking at that. And it would be nice that LAFCo's in there with the data they need to make decisions at that level. Commissioner Draper?
Could you just clarify what the motion or recommendation would be, or interest as it regards to Broadmoor? I wasn't clear. What was it, an update? Please clarify.
It was essentially an update of the MSR.
Okay, thank you.
I believe it was covered a couple years ago in the North County MSR. And I think it just, an update would probably be prudent given the number of issues that are facing that community right now. Rob?
And if I can, through the chair as well, we can either kind of consider that an update, or we can also just consider it a special study, which gives a little more flexibility of what areas LAFCo then determines and wants to look at as part of the review, so that we're not, because the service review is kind of beholden to some of the Cortese-Knox rules about determinations in certain specific areas. A special study would allow a little more flexibility if we want to focus on a particular issue or two of the district. So that could be an option as well.
I would probably opt for the special study simply because you don't know, once you open Pandora's box, you don't know what's there. You know?
Is that what you would recommend, Rob?
Yes, I think a special study would be the type of review to do for Broadmoor, particularly given the couple of the issues that have been up, that would allow us to focus a little bit more in depth on them.
Okay.
And then I would concur with your recommendation.
Yeah. So, and is there, Commissioner Draper?
Yes, I just recommend, if we could, is to get a copy of the existing MSR for Broadmoor. So for those of us who didn't read it, could read it or weren't there when it happened. And then to be able to have, I concur with the special study, but to be able to have an opportunity so that we could define what we want to have in that special study. In other words, some comments or scoping from the commission. So mine were procedural as opposed to anything else.
Okay, then Commissioner Horsley had also brought up the Harbor District. Is there any comments or thoughts about the Harbor District from commissioners?
That has been continually they have a sphere of zero influence. Nothing ever seems to happen about it. I think it really needs a serious MSR done. I think it's, if anything, it's getting worse. But this seems to be an ongoing issue where one MSR after another indicates that it has this zero sphere of influence and nothing happens. So I would like it to be added to the work plan.
Okay, So that's out there, but we need to have some public comment. Is there any members of the public or communications received, Angela?
Thank you, Chairman. I do see Commissioner Loman's hand, so I don't know if you want to go back to his hand really quick.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed you there, Rick. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There seems to be a huge amount of work here. I don't know how we are going to get all this done. I mean, usually we have a couple a year. Now we seem to have 6 or 7 things going on all at once. And I'm just curious as to how we can squeeze all this in. So that's my comment.
Rob, as the executive director and signing, I mean, to me, the East Palo Alto one is kind of closing down, is finishing, and then these are 2 new startup ones, right? South City and CSA, that's going to be CSA starting, South City starting, Burlingame and Hillsborough, San Bruno, Millbury, Foss. Maybe you can, since you're in charge of staff, can you answer that question, please?
I certainly can. Yes, I do think that with, and that could be something that we discuss at our next budget committee meeting about kind of the additional work plan. There is potentially the ability to add the special study for Broadmoor because it might be somewhat limited in scope compared to a larger MSR. I would want to talk a little bit more in depth with the budget committee about what the timing of a full MSR for the Harbor District, only because the last time we did our MSR for the Harbor District, I believe, was 2012. So I think it would be more than just a minor refresh. It probably would be a full new MSR, and there has been a lot of changes in the district since 2012. And the list that's currently shown on the work plan that takes us through Foster City, that really is the conclusion of essentially the first round of MSRs. So the city of South San Francisco, Westboro Water, Burlingame, Hillsborough, San Bruno, Millbury, and Foster City have not had MSRs conducted by LAFCo since they've been instituted in 2000. So the work plan initially was to complete those first reviews of those cities and then have a larger work plan about second reviews, additional reviews for other specific agencies, and getting kind of in more of a routine for how we do those MSRs. But the proposed work plan is to kind of wrap up that first round of reviews. I think an additional special study might be able to fit in there. We can talk about the timing of that. An additional MSR, particularly of the Harbor District, I don't know if staff would necessarily have the broadband to be able to complete that study this upcoming fiscal year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not necessarily saying it has to be done next upcoming year, but it shouldn't slip through the cracks is my comment.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, getting back, is there any public comments or hands raised, Angela, for this issue, the budget?
Thank you, Chairman. We did not receive any written public comments for this item, and I do not see any virtual hands raised.
Okay, thank you. So do we want to have a motion and amend it to the for direction of staff for the Broadmoor MSR, and maybe something to the effect of Half Moon Bay is an area of interest and we would like to see it staffing, you know what I mean, staffing available or whatever. Is there a motion?
Well, I will have a motion, but I think as it relates to Broadmoor, there was consensus that it was a special study, not an MSR. Is that
Right.
is it correct? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I move that we adopt or accept the work plan, and with the addition of having Broadmoor special study added to it, that there be also a noted interest in Half Moon Bay and as well as the Harbor District. not adding it in, but just noting the interest of the commission in those two things.
I don't think Half Moon Bay, I think just the Harbor District.
Okay.
Am I
Right.
correct in that, Harvey?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. And I think I saw Commissioner Horsley's hand up. Or did you put it down?
Well, I mean, yeah, I was sort of reluctant to say, but it seems to me that the, some of the work plan, like for example, Millbrae and city of Millbrae and San Bruno or Hillsborough. So we're not going to, talk about consolidating cities. I just those seem like perfunctory to me, and it seems that things like Broadmoor Police District is a much more timely. Foster City. I don't know that the MSR is going to really add anything to the city of Foster City, but I think in any case, I just would. I would want the executive officer to take a look at, the priorities. I'm fine with putting off. I understand that the Harbor District would be much more complex, but I can't see that Broadmoor is that complex of an issue. And so I would like to see that the work plan prioritize something that I think is much more of a higher priority.
Okay, so is the maker of the motion willing to amend their motion or move forward for a second?
I'm quite willing to accept a recommendation that, and I guess it's a question that, do we get it? Should the motion be that we agree to the things that we want to have in there, which includes a special study of Broadmoor, but we request the executive order to come back with a different priority or timing, and based on the comments that we hear today? That's what I'm hearing, so that we can see when that would be a way to proceed.
Yeah, Commissioner Draper, I think you put you did it exactly the way I would recommend, that have the executive officer come back and look at his proposed work plan and see if we could make some specific changes regarding the Broadmoor Police District.
Right, it's the order of when things are done is what I hear you are concerned with.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And so things could be 100% could be done, but it's the order that they get done is of issue. And so I think that's the important part, is to include all the things that are in the work plan, but ask the executive officer to come back with revisions regarding the order or of the timing of the specific work items.
I second that motion.
Okay, so we've had the public hearing. Rob, do you understand the motion?
Yes, that is clear direction to staff, and we will have a budget committee meeting later in April where we can discuss this in further. And this is only the first reading really of the draft budget, so we will have the budget again in May for the full commission review along with the work plan.
Okay,
Yes.
so we have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand the motion?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, then vote please, Angela.
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes.
Commissioner Loman,
Yep.
Commissioner Rohrbach,
Yes.
Commissioner Slocum,
Yes.
Vice Chair Draper,
Yes.
Chairman O'Neill.
Yes, and that
Thank you. The
motion,
motion passed.
that motion passes 7-0. Next is item, let's see, item number 9, appointment of a public member recruitment committee. Rob?
Thank you, Chair. So the term for the office of both the current regular public member, which is Ann, and the alternative public member, which is Jim O'Neill, both end in May of 2022. The upcoming term would be, a new term would be from 2022 and expiring in May of 2026. So there was a recruitment that went out for the public member positions. The announcement came out and circulated on January 31st. And there's a deadline of April 18th to submit application to the executive officer. The commission's policy on appointment of the public member and the alternative public member provides for the creation of a recruitment committee consisting of 3 committee members. And the committee would review applications and conduct interviews with the candidates. And then the committee would make a recommendation to the commission at the May LAFCo meeting. So it would be anticipated that the committee would meet after the April 18th meeting at some time between then and the May commission meeting to review the applications of anyone that has submitted them, and then to conduct the interviews. In 2018, the last time we did this process, the recruitment committee member, the recruitment committee consisted of 1 city member, 1 county member, and 1 special district member. And so it is the recommendation then to for the commission to appoint 3 commission members to the public member recruitment committee. And then once the committee is then formed, the staff will coordinate with them regarding reviewing the applications and the interview process.
Okay. Do we have nominations, and then we'll open the public hearing? So I guess let's just go special districts. Which one of you would like to be a part of the committee?
I'd be happy if Joshua wanted to be part of it.
I would be happy if Commissioner Lohman would be on that committee. I'm pretty busy right now, Rick. Are you able to do this?
Sure, I can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, County Supervisor Horsley, Supervisor Slocum.
Ward, I can do it.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so we have Horsley as a nominee. And Harvey, did you want to do it? Do you want me to do it? What's your preference? You're on mute. Harvey, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. I said, I would defer to you, Mike, if you're willing. Otherwise, I would do it, but I'm pretty busy this upcoming month.
Okay, I could do it. It's not that's big. So we have a nominee of Commissioner Lohman, Commissioner Horsley, Chair O'Neill. Is there any members of the public or any comments received from this item, Angela?
Thank you, Chairman. We did not receive any written public comment for this item, and we do not have any virtual hands raised from members of the public.
Okay, so we need a motion.
I'll make the motion to appoint Rick Lohman, myself, and Mike O'Neill as the subcommittee.
I second that.
Okay, Angela, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes.
Commissioner Lohman,
Yes.
Commissioner Varback,
Yes,
Commissioner Slocum,
Yes.
Vice Chair Draper,
Yeah.
Chairman O'Neill.
Yes.
Thank you,
Okay.
Chair. Your motion passes.
Motion 7-0. Thank you, Angela. Okay, next is item number 10, and that is the Legislative and Policy Committee. Rob?
So thank you, Chair, and I'll start with item 10A because there are 4 items under the Legislative and Policy Commission. So 10A is the adoption of the Calapco legislative platform and local LAFCo legislative platform. So each year, the Calapco Legislative Committee reviews and updates the Calapco legislative policies. San Mateo LAFCo has typically adopted these policies as the Commission's legislative platform. And then in November of 2021, the Calapco board approved edits to the legislative policy. There's an attachment to that which shows in track changes what that policy is. In general, it includes a couple of changes regarding the climate adaptation policies, which is very similar actually to what LAFCo's local policy is for MSRs for climate adaptation and LAFCo. There's minor edits to existing policies with shown in track changes. And then in general, the platform talks about how to enhance LAFCo authority and power based on Cortese Knox to follow that law. It also talks about supporting local conditions, supporting orderly development, and opposing legislation that gives individual agencies special status or provides for circumventing the LAFCo process. The Legislative and Policy Committee did review this document on February 23rd of this year and was generally supportive of the adoption of the policy. The committee did recommend a couple of issues, and they stated that the policy should continue to focus on areas considering water and agriculture and open space issues, and additional policy statements that should be included in Calapco's legislative policies in the future. And there was a mention about development pressures and population changes that will continue to impact natural resources and public services. And there is a focus that should be brought to those particular issues. So the committee did have those comments along with several comments about the wording of several policies. And so to address that, LAFCo is committed to working with Calapco in the upcoming year to review these comments with the Legislative and Policy Committee and see how they can be incorporated in future documents. But again, the committee ultimately did recommend approval of the Calapco legislative platform as is. So the recommendation then is to adopt the 2021 Calapco legislative policies. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from commissioners? Okay, moving on to public comment. Is there any public comments, Angela?
Thank you, Chairman. We do not have any written public comment, and I do not have any hands raised from the public.
Okay, thank you. So I need a motion.
So moved.
Second. Need a second.
Second,
Second.
We have a second by Cosgrove, who's first sworn. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
yes.
Commissioner Loman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rohrback,
Yes.
Commissioner Slocum,
Yes.
Vice Chair Draper,
Yes,
Chairman O'Neill.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Your motion passes.
Okay, item 10B, which is Rob to present. It's an information only item.
Yeah, so this is the Calapco legislative report. There are 24 bills currently being tracked by Calapco. I'll just touch on 4 of them very briefly, 2 of which we'll talk about under item 10C and 10D respectively. SB 938, which is the protest provisions rewrite of the Cortese Knox Hertzberg Local Government Act. This is a Calapco sponsored bill. This is based on the recommendation actually of a 2017 Little Hoover Commission report regarding special districts and improving oversight and transparency. The rewrite effort was undertaken by a working group consisting of representatives from both Calapco and the CSDA, which is the California Special Districts Association. The provisions that are recommended for change include redrafting the existing protest code sections into one main section. Right now, there have been multiple places within the protest provisions in 5700. It creates specific circumstances under which LAFCo may initiate dissolution of a district with a 25% threshold. If there is a determinations documented in admissible service review, and it's presented then at a 21-day public hearing. This would change the current 10% threshold from LAFCO initiated dissolutions and would be consistent with the 25% threshold for all other initiated actions. The process also allows for a minimum of 12-month remediation process period for the district, with progress reports provided by the district to LAFCO halfway through the remediation process. If that process does not yield sufficient results, then a second hearing could occur, and that at that point, the LAFCO could move forward with the dissolution or terminate it. And again, that threshold would then be higher at 25%. In some cases, with the lower threshold, it presents LAFCO with a challenge of trying to move forward any kind of dissolution on its own, as the threshold is quite lower. than a number of other types of dissolutions or other actions. AB 9257 is the annual LAFCo omnibus bill. There are minor changes this year proposed in this cleanup. Some of it has to do with a definition of adding successor agency to the government code chapter. There's also changes between the word proposal and applications because those are defined differently and used differently in the code, and cleaning up that language to have it match accordingly. And so there are just minor changes there. Again, that is a Calapco sponsored bill. SB 852 would create something called a Climate Resiliency District Act and allow for cities, counties, special districts, or any combination of those entities to form a climate resiliency district for the purposes of raising and allocating funds for climate resiliency projects. Right now, this process and this bill would bypass LAFCo in its formation and oversight of these new districts. And the districts doesn't necessarily provide any services, but instead they act more as a funding mechanism. So that is currently under a watch from Calapco. And then AB 1640 is the coordination of regional and local efforts regarding climate strategies. And this is the creation of regional climate networks. And this was having LAFCo participate as part of that, and along with other agencies, including cities, counties, and special districts. And this is a very similar bill to a bill that came up last year, AB 897 from Assemblymember Mullen. So we will just keep it as a watch because that may be of interest for LAFCo to participate in those types of networks if they are created. And so that concludes the legislative report.
Just out of curiosity, would the SB 852, does that mean we would need to be changing, or would it affect one shoreline, our county district type of thing, or JPA, whatever that is?
It wouldn't necessarily need to require changes to one shoreline, as one shoreline was created by its own legislation. I think the intent of the Climate Resiliency District Act may be similar to create similar types of districts as to one shoreline, where they are focused mainly on funding. One shoreline does have the other issue of actually being part of the old flood control zone and still having projects and managing projects in that flood control zone up in Colma and other areas of the county. But I don't think it would have any impact necessarily on shoreline.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any questions from any of the other commissioners?
Nope.
Okay, there's no, that was information only item, so we'll move on to item 10C. Rob?
So 10C is a letter of support for SB 938. And that was, as mentioned in the legislative report, that is the cleanup of the protest provisions. And so there's a draft letter in your packet for letter of support that will be sent to the state legislature. So there's a recommendation then to approve that letter of support, and then LAFCo staff will send that out.
Okay, and that is a motion, that is a vote. So is there any members of the public that wish to comment?
Thank you, Chairman. We did not receive any written public comments, and we do not have any virtual hands raised.
Okay, is there any comments, questions? I need a motion from the commission.
Motion to approve.
Second,
We have Horsley, motion, Draper second, Angela.
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes.
Commissioner Loman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rohrbach,
Yes.
Commissioner Slocum,
Yes.
Vice Chair Draper,
yes,
Chairman O'Neill.
Yes,
Thank you, Chair. Your motion passes.
thank you. Item number 10D, and that is Rob?
That is a letter of support for AB 2957, which is the omnibus bill.
Okay.
Again, a motion to approve the letter.
Okay, is there any comments from the public?
Thank you, Chairman. We do not have any written public comments, and I do not see any hands raised from the public.
Thank you. Okay, is there any comments from commissioners, questions, and they need a motion?
So move.
Need a second?
Second,
Okay, moved by Lowman, seconded by Rohrbach. Vote, please.
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes.
Commissioner Loman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rohrbach,
yes.
Commissioner Slocum,
Yes.
Vice Chair Draper,
Yeah.
Chairman O'Neill.
Yes.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chair. Your motion passes.
thank you. Moving on to item number 11 is a information only item on LAFCo. Rob?
Thank you, Chair. So as 11A is the Calapco quarterly newsletter, and just a couple items out of that come into 11B. Calapco, the executive director, there has been a new executive director appointed, Renee LaRoche, as the executive director. Her first day in the role was back in February. She previously was the clerk of the Board of Supervisors for Maricopa County, and she's been there since 2012, and she's also been the past president of the California Clerk of the Board of Supervisors Association. So she will be replacing Pamela Miller as the longtime executive director for Calapco. Some of you have met her probably before at the annual conferences. Pamela Miller will be remaining on to assist Calapco through mid-March with this transition. And then a brief update just on the Calapco staff workshop. It was originally planned for next week. It has been canceled due to low registration, and part of that is probably due to people still having concerns about traveling and meeting in person. So a number of those sessions will instead be presented via webinar through Calapco over the next several months. There still tentatively is the annual conference that is scheduled for October, and we will hopefully be in a better COVID situation by then, where people will be more comfortable with traveling, but we will see, and I will continue to give you updates on that. And that concludes that report.
All right, thank you. Next is item number 12. Any comments or good for the order from commissioners in regards to LAFCO? Any news briefs or anything?
Nope.
All right. Next item is item number 13, and that's adjournment. So we'll adjourn the commission meeting to the next meeting on April 20th, 2022 for a special meeting. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming today, and thank you to staff for their work, and congratulations to Rob.
Thank you.
Bye.
Especially Rob.